Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. Season 1 is over, but we're just getting started here on post-show recaps talking about the Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. finale. I'm Josh Wigler, and I am here with my host of the day, who actually just chugged the last of my GH325, so she might be acting a little weird and writing on walls and stuff. Terri
Welcome.
Schwartz!
Thanks for having me, Josh.
Terri, what's up? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm still buzzing from that finale last night.
You're a big fan of the finale?
Yeah, I really liked where they went with it, and I really liked that they brought back a lot of that humor that was so fun about, the early parts of the season.
Yeah, it was good. I liked it too. Now, you guys might remember Terri Schwartz from the Captain America podcast that we did. We talked a little bit about Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. there. And, of course, if you are a Game of Thrones fan and if you are a reader of the books that Game of Thrones is based on, then you know Terri from Game of Thrones Book Club, which is our spoiler version of Game of Thrones that we do every week now, it seems like, which is pretty good. But no Game of Thrones spoilers here. This is not the place for that. This is a place where it's all Marvel all the time. And yeah, we haven't been covering Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. at all on post-show recaps, really, other than Captain America. But Terri and I both cover the show. I cover it for MTV. She covers it for Zap to It. We're both big fans of the show, and we wanted to get together and talk about the finale and maybe look at the whole season at large, because I think S.h.i.e.L.D. was a show that kind of a lot of people had very big expectations for. Some people were let down. Other people hung on, and I think those people, for the most part, I think were pretty well rewarded with this season. So, I don't know, Terri, can you talk a little bit about your relationship with the show, what you do in terms of covering the show? You've been on the set before, right?
Yeah, they did, back in January, they did sort of this big group set visit for journalists who were in LA, and that was fun. We got to, hang out on the bus. And a couple of the different sets they had, we got to take pictures with Lola, which I will always be happy about.
Did you touch Lola?
I sat on Lola. Like,
you're not supposed to do that.
You aren't supposed to do it, but then Brett Dalton and Ming Na did it right after me, so I didn't feel as bad. And Clark
Brett Dalton is an agent of HYDRA. You can't follow his lead.
That's true. That was before that reveal happened.
Oh my God.
That's a good point. But yeah,
now I don't know if I can trust you.
Well, we'll have to wait until season 2 to find out what me being an agent of HYDRA really has to do with anything. Yeah, but I started covering the show at Comic-Con when they showed the pilot, and I talked to everyone there back when no one knew who FitzSimmons were and why Melinda May was such a badass. And I've kept in touch with the cast and crew doing interviews throughout the season. And actually, I spoke to the showrunners yesterday. I have 2 articles going up today with a look back at season 1 and some season 2 teases. Like after I watched the finale, I had this long list of questions. And when I talked to them, I just started rattling them off to them, and finally they were like, we can't answer any of these yet, but clearly there are plenty. We intentionally left a lot of questions unanswered and open.
Nice. So, guys, Terri is bought and paid for by S.h.i.e.L.D. is what we're trying to say here.
Or HYDRA.
We're not really sure, but she's a fan. She's a big fan. She's very involved with the show. So yeah, I guess why don't we start kind of with sort of the long view of the season? What did you think of season 1 of Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D.? Not only along the way, what were you thinking of the show as it was going on, but now that the season has wrapped, what did you think of the first season of S.h.i.e.L.D.?
I think, like a lot of people who wanted to stick with it and really liked it, got really frustrated in like that first third. And I think that looking back, even knowing the HYDRA twist, that's going to be the part that maybe people tell their friends to skip when they're going through it. I think that it wasn't necessarily the writer's fault that they had to drag out for 18 episodes something that could have been done in 5. It was because Captain America came out and they had to reveal the twist then. But I really like what they managed to pull off. One thing that I was really impressed with is that even though there were times early on in the show when I felt that it was going a predictable route, it never ended up being predictable. It always subverted expectations, even to the point that Ward wasn't a good guy by the end of the first season. He's still an enemy, and I thought they really played with that nicely with that scene last night in the finale when Garrett comes back and you think that he's going to like become superpowered and be a threat again, and no, Coulson just comes in and shoots him, and that's the end of it. Or is it? Because no one's really dead in Marvel. No. But I like that, and I think that even though the execution wasn't always the best, and even the showrunners might admit that, early on they had to figure out what they had to do. I really liked the payoff, and I thought that after from like episode 17 or 18 on, it was a solid, awesome show, and every episode had me as excited, and every reveal I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the turning point for me actually wasn't turn, 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 which, is a turning point for the show, but I think Tracks, the episode, I think that was somewhere in the middle of the run. The one where, it's all yeah, the train
Yeah.
episode, it's all shot out of sequence, it's all presented out of sequence. It's the one where Skye gets shot. I think that was the best episode of the series up to that point, and I think still probably one of the very best of that first season. And I think from that point onward, I was starting to really get into the characters. I even liked Ward when he was a stick in the mud, when he was kind of a bland guy. So I found myself really liking the show a lot more, and especially when we got to the HYDRA stuff, the episode after Captain America, Turn, Turn, Turn. I thought was really compelling, and I was very interested in and invested in the characters, and that Ward reveal really took me off guard. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I thought that was great, and that was the episode that reveals who the clairvoyant was, which I was a little disappointed that it ended up being Garrett, that it ended up being Bill Paxton.
Yeah, I wasn't as well. I was really hoping. We had this theory that it was going to be Zola, which I thought would have been way cooler.
Yeah, Arnim
But
Zola from the Captain America movies.
I think that when we as the audience heard clairvoyant and Raina, we saw so much of it through the eyes of Raina and through like her wanting this to be a bigger thing. Our disappointment was her disappointment. But again, when I talked to Marissa and Jed yesterday, they made an interesting comment sort of about what they called the Captain America of it, that they were like, we wanted to say Hydra, so we couldn't, so we created the clairvoyant in place of that. And I think I can see sort of what they wanted to do. But yeah, Garrett was fun, but he wasn't who I wanted the clairvoyant to be.
Yeah, I was disappointed during the reveal. I didn't like it there because I love Bill Paxton. Aliens is one of my favorite movies of all time, and he's Private Hudson in that movie, and he's fantastic. And yeah, he's hilarious. He's great in everything, and I really liked him as kind of almost this like swashbuckling Shield agent. This guy who's so gung ho. Is like the complete opposite of buttoned-up Coulson. Is very lots of bravado, kind of an action hero. And then I was disappointed that he turned out to be the big bad of the season. But I actually kind of really got on board with Evil Garrett the further along it got. You kind of have sort of this doofus as your main bad guy, which I don't know. I think in a way was a little fitting for the first season of Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. that it kind of goes that way where the big reveal is sort of immediately disappointing, like in the moment, but as you continue along with it, it ends up being really fun and produces a lot of really good stories and moments. And I think that's almost symbolic of the first season of S.h.i.e.L.D. that it was disappointing for a while, and then in that final stretch just got, I thought, really, really good.
And the payoff is great too because I think they underplayed it a little bit, but these Garrett and Coulson were Nick Fury's two proteges essentially from what we know about them, and then we have this face off between the three of them in the finale, and that all the Nick Fury stuff I thought was really fun, and they used him a lot more than I expected, especially after that first cameo. So I thought the payoff was good, but I would like a stronger big bad. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but as much as I genuinely really enjoyed the Hydra twist and that connection to Captain America, but for this next season, I think that it would really hurt the show to be so tied to a movie in the same way that it was.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I was really thinking that the ending of this season was going to get us into space. I thought that, the team would be broken up. I thought that some of the characters would be still on Earth, and I thought that, at least Coulson and Skye would somehow be beamed up to space so that they could intersect with Guardians of the Galaxy a little bit, because I do think in a lot of ways, and it is probably, it's the blessing and the curse of this show, is that it's an hour-long weekly commercial for the Marvel movies sometimes. The TV is there to serve the film side of Marvel. And I really was surprised that they didn't end up doing a more obvious Guardians of the Galaxy setup. I think that, we'll get into it a little bit, but, the writing on the wall, I think you could make some arguments, still has the space connection, and I think we will get there in some capacity at some point in the future. But, it doesn't seem like they ended this in a way that really ties to the movies. So Guardians of the Galaxy is coming out in August, and that's, well before S.h.i.e.L.D. comes back. And then after that, there's no Marvel movie to tie to until the Avengers 2, Age of Ultron, which is in May. So it's a long while to not have to deal with, the fallout and the events of the Marvel movies. At the same time, if it ends up being something where it's really tied to Age of Ultron, then that's going to be what, like 20 episodes of Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. that are going to have to hide some major aspect of Age of Ultron from the audience. So I do hope that they learned their lesson, because I think the HYDRA reveal was very cool. Obviously, it was very necessary based on how Captain America plays out, that S.h.i.e.L.D. falls down, and, on the show, that's going to have a huge impact, considering the show is called Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. And I think that the way that they played it was really good, but I think that the setup leading up to it, looking back at Centipede and the Clairvoyant and all of those things, it just feels a little disappointing that they couldn't have just come out and said HYDRA the whole time. So I hope that when they're starting to structure Season 2 of Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D., they do keep that in mind. I think you and I are on the same page on that.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned the timeline. I think that they give the show a lot more momentum with the fact that Coulson is now Director Coulson and not Agent Coulson, that he is now running S.h.i.e.L.D. That, could be interesting in that, as you mentioned, Guardians of the Galaxy is coming out in August. That's before Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. comes back. And that's the first movie in a while that really we can't see a direct connection to the Marvel Cinematic Universe beyond Benicio del Toro's character, the Collector. Like that what's going to be interesting with that movie is to see how they do connect that to Marvel. And I think that it would have been early and felt a little cheap to have it be like Coulson is going into space, I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Yeah.
But also, I think in Season 2, especially with Coulson now being the head of S.h.i.e.L.D. and inevitably, people are going to have to find out he's still alive. He's named one of the Avengers, essentially, in this finale. I think it would be a really good opportunity to bring him back into the Marvel movies in the Avengers 2, and that could be a nice connection instead of it being the other way around. Have this whole series build up to the Avengers 2 and being a part of it, and then deal with the fallout after. Because that'll be probably a couple of episodes before the Season 2 finale that Avengers comes out.
Right. I wonder how Marvel can figure out a way, or if they can figure out a way, to have Clark Gregg, to have Agent Coulson back in the movies in a way that doesn't just feel kind of forced for the people who don't watch Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. So I wonder if we'll see Coulson in the movies again. I mean, I certainly think it's possible, but I do want to, going into the finale a little bit now and talking about that moment where Samuel Jackson, where Nick Fury tells Coulson basically why he was so intent on bringing Coulson back to life. It's because Coulson's an Avenger.
I thought that had the most emotional weight of any moment in that finale, because as fans of the Marvel franchise that they've created, that is such a payoff going back to Iron Man. To have Nick Fury say, "No, Coulson, you're an Avenger." I think that's as amazing for the audience as it is for his character, and just the reaction on Clark Gregg's face, I thought was really touching.
Yeah, it was great, and I think that the resurrection of Coulson was one of those plot lines that frustrated a lot of viewers, that they were really stringing the mystery along for a long time of, how did he come back, and then why did he come back? Did he really come back? Is this really Coulson? All of those questions were really up in the air, probably for too long, and I feel like now, at least the how and the why, maybe less the how, is answered at this point. Do you feel satisfied on the Coulson resurrection at this point?
I feel like it's been answered as fully as they're going to answer it, but I have always, I felt a little unsatisfied with it just in their delivery. I always felt like I was left asking questions, so even with the answer fully formed, I still feel like it is left not as completely explained as I wanted, but I don't think that that's going to be change or get remedied. And I do think that that's just a problem of the fact that it took them, what, like 20 episodes to fully answer that in tiny little breadcrumbs along the way.
Yeah, yeah, it was a very kind of hard to handle sometimes the way that they were parsing that information out. But I think at this point we can pretty safely say we know that that Coulson himself was supervising the technology to bring people back to life. He decided it was too dangerous and it should be scrapped, and he was developing it to make sure that they could save Avengers in case any Avengers die. And then we find out from Fury that, the reason that I didn't shut it down and the reason that I worked so hard to bring you back is because you're one of, maybe 4 or 5 people in the world that I trust, and you're too valuable not to be here anymore. And I did think that was really great. I thought that was a great moment at the end of, this kind of really long road to get to this answer. So I thought that was really good. And but I do think that there's still, a mysterious aspect here of the resurrection, which is GH325. We still don't know exactly what it is.
We definitely don't know what it is. We don't know what Coulson and Garrett were writing. Like, that sort of seemed like genetic code to me for someone who has no knowledge about science at all. I was like,
Right.
oh, maybe that's what that is. Or is it a blueprint or what? But my big question that they didn't touch on at all is Skye was resurrected with the GH325. Is she going to be able to understand what Coulson is drawing? Is that going to be something that comes out in her, or is because she's a monster and she's special and she's different, is it going to affect her in a different way?
Yeah, they really haven't done anything with Skye and GH325. They haven't really done much to reveal how that's kind of changed who she is, but you can't forget the fact that it is flowing in her veins as well. So even if she can't understand the writing that Coulson is doing, and the writing that Garrett was doing as well, that she is something. There's going to be some kind of change within her, and obviously there's something very important about her as well that we're not entirely sure about. So I don't know, how did you feel about Skye's arc this season, and the fact that they kind of left this question a little bit up in the air about who she is and what she is, and the fact that it certainly seems like this is going to be a big plot point for next season, considering that secret ending with her father coming into the mix?
Yeah, someone actually tweeted at us. I don't know if you saw, but they were like, "Did anyone else find Skye care a lot less about Skye's mystery than the Hydra stuff?" And I'm really into the Skye mystery. I really did, even though it was 2 huge cliffhangers between Coulson's writing and Raina going to see Skye. Was it the father? I sort of got the sense that it was asexual. I wasn't sure which parent it was.
I couldn't really tell. Yeah, it was. All we know is that it was like a really messed up looking hand.
Yeah.
I think in my recap I called it. We got the Dr. Claw vantage point of this.
I was totally on board with that, and while I thought that the execution of Coulson's mystery, which is so important to just justifying this show, while I thought that wasn't handled that well, I think that the Skye mystery has been handled really well. I was hoping we would get more answers this season, but that is obviously going to be a big part of next season. I thought they set it up great to really have people invested. And I'm so intrigued by Raina. I think that Ruth Negga has done such an amazing job with that character and really made us distrust her, but also just be fascinated by her. And again, there are so many questions about her. Is she the same type of creature as Skye is? How does she know where Skye's parent is? What are these monsters she's referring to? I think we can maybe assume that they're aliens. Though when she was describing how these monsters destroyed the village, I kind of hoped that Chloe Bennett joking about being She-Hulk all season paid off and that actually be what that is.
Yeah, I know that there are a lot of people who wanted to see, Skye be revealed as, Miss Marvel or She-Hulk or some character from the Marvel universe. I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think that Skye is Skye, and I think Skye is going to be her own character. If anything, I think that, we would see Skye show up as Skye in Marvel Comics at some point. I'm not even, they may have already done that. I'm a little out of touch with it at this point. But, yeah, I don't think that we are going to see her secretly be Carol Danvers or anything like that. I think that the Skye mystery feels pretty unique to the show, and I think that that's something that they are going to hopefully give us a lot of next season, because I do think, why would they have included that as sort of the stinger at the end of the episode if that wasn't something they're really going to start diving into?
And this question of evolution, too, does seem, even though it only really came to the forefront in the finale, I think has been a driving force of the show, because is evolution, using this GH325 to superpower humans, is creating superhumans part of evolution? And I think that is going to be an interesting question going into next season, and also why I really hope that the show finds a way to stand on its own legs and not be completely beholden to the movies. Though it's okay, so we know that there's an alien creature that this GH325 gets taken from, and there has been speculation that it's Kree. When you referred to Coulson as writing on the wall, like, I was thinking, what if that is an alien language? What if that is taken from whatever the species that serum was came from? That could be interesting, and that could also tie it to Guardians of the Galaxy, depending on what we meet there.
Yeah, and I mean, even last week when Garrett gets injected in the penultimate episode, when Garrett is injected with GH325, and Ward asks him, "How do you feel?" Or he says, "What do you feel?" Or "What does it feel like?" And Garrett says, "Feels like the universe," like a very kind of like Nicolas Cage moment. I thought that was great, and I think that's a very deliberate line, the universe, and it starts to feel like Garrett is having kind of these far-reaching visions of everything that's going on, and to me, that felt like it was very tied up in the cosmic side of the Marvel universe, which obviously is going to be a very big deal coming out of Guardians of the Galaxy, but I think to tee up that stuff in such an obvious way, to tee up the cosmic side of Marvel at the end of Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. in a very over-the-top way, I think would have been a mistake. I think the smarter way to do it is have Guardians of the Galaxy land in August, have it make millions and millions of dollars like it's going to do, and then people are going to be familiar with that stuff, so when Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. is rolling out, they could start bringing those elements more into the into the forefront, and really play with that stuff. And I think that's when you're going to find out that this thing is a Kree. That's when you're going to get whatever alien species it is. I used to think it was a frost giant, but that was when I was really clinging to my hopes that Loki was the clairvoyant, and I was wrong. I was sadly mistaken.
I will say, you brought up, like, you thought that the end of the season would send these characters into outer space. Not to keep going back to the times I've talked with the showrunners, but when we talked to them on set...
Please, keep going back to it, Terri. Just make us all feel really bad.
Back. No, when we talked to them in January on that set visit, someone brought... It was after, Thor had come out, and they were like, can we expect these characters to go to Asgard? And they said season 2 would definitely be too soon, but there are obviously other realms that are important, and maybe in season 3 or beyond. So I think that viewers can expect the show to stay on Earth unless Jed and Marissa completely change their plan for the show. But they can expect that for next season, and maybe beyond that, we see how the Marvel Cinematic Universe expands by then.
Totally. You mentioned Reyna, and one of the things that I think that the show has started to do a really good job with is building up its rogues gallery and kind of starting to establish people outside of the main cast as faces that are going to be frequently popping up. Like Ian Quinn. I love Ian Quinn.
Yeah, he's so much fun.
Ian Quinn's great. Anytime Ian Quinn is in an episode of Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D., I'm going to be on board. And now I kind of feel, and maybe you'll feel differently, but I feel like Ward is slipping into that position. Obviously we see him now as a villain. He was working for HYDRA. He was working for Garrett the whole time. He's now, a man without a leader. He's a prisoner. He's, in custody of Coulson at this point. I feel like he's going to slip into the background a little bit and be used more sparingly, almost like an Ian Quinn. Do you expect... First off, were you surprised that Ward survived the finale? And secondly, do you think that we will be seeing him full-time on Season 2?
I thought it would have been really ballsy if they had killed him this season. I didn't expect them to do that. Honestly, what I expected them to do is have him... Because we see him questioning his allegiance in the previous episodes leading up to the finale. I sort of expected them to bring him back into the fold as a good guy. And I actually wrote an article where I said the worst thing they can do is do that, because it would be way too predictable for a show like this. I was really happy they didn't do that. again, when I talked to Jen Marisi yesterday, I asked them that. I was like, "Or do you have a plan for Ward next season?" And they said that they do. They're really intrigued with what Brett has brought to the character this season. I think he still is going to be a series regular next season. He might slip into the, he might slip back into the background for a little bit, but they sort of implied that Triplet was going to be around for a limited amount of time next
For
season.
for a limited amount of time?
Because I love this character. Is he part of the S.h.i.e.L.D. gang? And they were like, well, we like him too. We like working with him, and you can expect him around for a little bit. That is not like he has replaced Ward to me. I sort of feel like they could build Ward back up to be an asset of the S.h.i.E.L.D. team. But I would love it if he became next season's big bad. I think that would be so great. Like, we've already seen twice with Graviton and with Blizzard the creation of a supervillain, but to have it be Ward, to have it be someone who we started off liking for so long, and to have that, like, it would be so personal. I think that would be a really interesting journey.
So I'm gonna say three things. The first thing I'm gonna say is to make a 24 comparison that'll go over some people's heads, but hopefully land on the people who've been paying attention to our 24 coverage here on post show recaps. I hope that they kind of Nina Myers Ward. Like, I hope that he becomes that character who was very important in season 1, is a good guy for most of season 1, has that turn and becomes an antagonist at the end of season 1, is apprehended, is still part of the universe, but is used very sparingly in season 2 and subsequent seasons if he makes it that long. I think that Ward is a great character right now, but I think to have him around full time just seems like that could get very old very quickly. So I hope that we see him sparingly. I hope that they kind of use him the way 24 used Nina Myers for a couple of seasons. So that's one. Number two is I don't think that we have to talk about it too much, but just holy crap, that fight with him and Melinda May was great. And yeah. Melinda May, like, nailing his foot into the ground was just the best thing ever.
Oh, and also, like, the whole lead up to that where Skye and Ward are having this conversation and you think it's one thing and she's like, oh, I have a secret weapon too, and you slept with her, so she's super pissed. Yeah. I thought that I laughed out loud at that. I thought that was fantastic writing. Again, I thought one of our former coworkers said that he thought that this had one too many jokes, but I thought that the humor was on point in this finale, especially after we saw our S.h.i.E.L.D. team scrabbling for so long. And the lead up to that fight and Ming-Na just showing why she's such a badass. I loved it all. Yeah,
it's pretty good. Nail to the foot was one of my favorite moves of the season. Okay, and so the third thing that I want to say is I will be very upset if Agent Triplet is not a series regular next season. If BJ Britt is not hired to be a series regular and be part of the S.h.i.E.L.D. team, that is BS, because that guy is great. He's a great character. He brings diversity to the team. He brings, a lot of swagger to the team. He has history with the team now. He's got potentially this romance with Simmons. It certainly seems that Simmons had the hots for Triplet, and Triplet would probably be down with that, and that would be very good to have, especially given Fitz's condition, which I'm sure we're about to get to. And he's got the Howling Commandos connection, so he's connected to the Marvel Universe. He really, I thought, filled out the Ward role better than Ward.
I felt the same way.
He's that badass fighter on the field, that kind of athletic agent that would work really well alongside Coulson and Melinda May in any scene that they were in together. He has a great rapport with FitzSimmons. I think it would be such a mistake not to bump up Triplet. So I know you talked to the showrunners and they seem to indicate that maybe that's not going to be the case. I hope that gets changed. I hope that Triplet comes back full time, and that's basically all I have to say about that.
I feel the same way. And he had that amazing line in last night's episode where he was like, "Sir, I always bring the funk to any fight that I go to," or something. Like, I agree, and that was sort of why I was asking that question. I was like obviously the fans have taken to him so well, and that's amazing. I do think all season we've been told that Fitz and Simmons see each other as brother and sister. We found out that's surely not the case in last night's episode, and I think that that love triangle, I think it's significant that we didn't see Fitz after they were pulled out of the water. I doubt that he's in great shape. We'll see where they find him in season 2, or if he's even a similar person. But if they follow on the track they're going on, it could be a love triangle situation where all three parts can't coexist together. But that would be a really bad reason to have him leave the show.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about it too much anymore because I'm just going to get mad. Thinking about Shield without Triplet makes me upset. So let's talk about other upsetting things, and let's talk about FitzSimmons in the finale. And yeah, they have this brother sister dynamic throughout much of the season, but clearly we find out that Fitz's feelings for Simmons are greater than that. It's like if when Luke and Leia make out in Empire Strikes Back, and Luke is just like, oh, I kind of like this. And even after finding out that they're brother and sister, he'd just be like, I don't mind. It's all right. This works. That's kind of what it felt like to me. So it was a little weird, but it's all right. He's very he's very sweet, and I think her reaction to his confession that he without saying I love you, but having that moment where he kind of revealed his true feelings for her, and her just hugging him and kissing his face and everything. I thought that was so great, especially when you're right there thinking, well, this could be it for Fitz, and they don't fully pull the trigger, but clearly Fitz is in bad shape.
That entire scene, I've been a huge FitzSimmons fan from the get-go, from the pilot. Some people were like, oh, these scientists are sort of annoying. No, I thought that they were just the right amount of humor and had just such a great dynamic. And I did like that they didn't go romantic right off the bat, even though obviously they built up to it. And I think the past few episodes it became pretty obvious to the audience how Fitz felt. But I thought that scene was really touching, and I loved, again, not doing the predictable thing. She didn't make out with him at that. She kissed him on his face and showed her love for him, even if we don't necessarily think that it's romantic back.
No, I don't think so.
Also, what about their conversation about death? When they were just sitting there and she's talking about how they will always create matter. I thought that was just such a beautiful scene in this otherwise action-packed episode. I thought that was really touching, and that Elizabeth and Ian played it to perfection. They really add, I think, some important emotional weight to this series that it would not be as good without.
Yeah, I agree. I think that actually that the whole FitzSimmons series of scenes, I thought those were really good examples of how Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. has become pretty good, if not, really good at times. It's not always super consistent, but it has its moments that really work, and I thought that the FitzSimmons stuff in the finale was fantastic, really emotional. The stakes were really high, and a really good example of the fact that, yeah, you now start you care about these characters now. I think, at the start of the show, one of the early complaints was I don't care about anybody but Coulson. I don't care about Skye. I don't care about Dopey McDopes a lot, Ward. I don't care about any of these people. FitzSimmons is annoying. I don't care. Who's Melinda May? I don't care. And I think by the end of season 1, even if, not every one of them is your favorite character, I think that you don't want to see bad things happen to these people. When Ward is revealed as an agent of HYDRA, it's a gut punch. And when, this last week, when FitzSimmons get dropped into the ocean by Ward, it's a gut punch. And then when Fitz basically makes the decision to sacrifice his life to save Simmons here, it's a really emotional thing. And I think, you gotta tip your hat to the writers for getting us to that place and making it feel really, earned, and really earning our love for these characters. But yeah, I'm very curious to see what they do with Fitz, because you're right, I think probably pretty intentionally didn't show us the body. They didn't show us, what state Fitz is in, really. We didn't get to see a lot of that. So where, what's happened to Fitz, what's going to happen to Fitz, they would have killed him off if he wasn't going to be a part of the show going forward. So he's got to be, important in season 2.
Yeah, I think that they have that cast photo that they always use to promote the show that has Skye and Coulson and FitzSimmons and Ward and May, and that hasn't changed even up through the end of the season. So that's why I'm pretty confident that at least into season 2 we're going to get those main characters back. In what capacity will be interesting. And I really I read another interview where I think it was on IGN maybe, where the producers were saying essentially Fitz could come back as a completely different person after this experience, and maybe that's the case, and maybe they need to use some crazy S.h.i.e.L.D. thing to bring him back to life, but I think maybe that could be a good opportunity for a reset of his character, to maybe have him take a different turn and not be so sweet and not be this guy who just is very earnest And especially, I mean, it's important he's been betrayed by Ward.
Darth Fitz.
Yeah, Darth Fitz. I think that betrayal will probably hit him pretty hard because like, that last group of remaining fans were so certain that Ward was really a good guy, and Ward dropped him in the ocean to die.
To get back to Ward for a second, just because you bring that up, do you think that there's any redemption for Ward?
Yeah, I don't
you think
want
we'll get there?
I think that we could. It could go one of two ways. Some people make the Angel comparison, that maybe he'll be the Angel character of Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D., which I could see that being the case, like always torn between what he was taught and maybe how he feels. I did love the way that they played up he obviously still has feelings for Skye, even though he can't really conceptualize them, and I like how she just called him sick for that, and they really like nailed that home. Yeah, I think that there is redemption for Ward, and they set him up for that, so whether or not we ever get to see it will be something else entirely. How do you want Ward to be a good guy again, or would you rather?
No, I want him to be thoroughly rotten. I want him to be somebody that we can never trust. I want him to be like Black Widow if Black Widow never went good. You know, I want him to be that character who is as he seems at this point, somebody who is just ruthless, self-preservationist. You know, the betrayals that he did here, you know, all of that, like how do you come back from that? You know, realistically, I don't think that there's really a good way to do it, and I find him such a more interesting character this way. And you know, I don't necessarily want to see him like superpowers or anything like that, but I do think having him be a thorn in the side for S.h.i.e.L.D., maybe a reluctant ally from time to time, but not somebody who is working with their best interests at heart. I think it's the better direction for the show to take with Ward.
Now, I will say we have not yet brought up the biggest WTF moment of this episode, getting Patton back.
Yeah, I was literally about to go there.
What? Okay, I think ever since Coulson died, people have been yelling, like model decoy, at everything on this show and in Marvel. And this is the closest that we've come to actually seeing that. It is worth pointing out that, you know, Eric referred to his brother back when we first met him. But still, I mean, like, come on. It's gotta be something. They can't just be twins who happen to say the exact same thing.
If Patton Oswalt is like the Marvel Universe's life model decoy, that's amazing. That's just fantastic. I'm so into it.
And I mean, I hope that this means he'll come back next season, because I don't know if you felt the same way, but having him die so quickly, it hurt. I was like, that's a bummer. He was really fun. He added such great life to the show. And to have him be back, and maybe be back for an extended period of time, and I hope that there's a little Koenig twin in every single secret S.h.i.E.L.D. base around the world.
Yeah, I kind of hope so. You know who I hope does not come back is Mike Peterson.
Yeah, you're done with that. I know you weren't a big fan of the depiction.
Not a Deathlock fan. I think that they really bungled Deathlock.
I feel like he's someone who they can use in very small doses. Maybe
I hope much smaller doses than he was used this season.
Yeah.
I think that they got to move away from Mike Peterson. I think that they kind of screwed up the Deathlock stuff. You know, he does not look anything like he looks in Marvel Comics. I'm not even like a huge Deathlock fan or anything like that, but Deathlock has such an iconic look. If you're going to do Deathlock, he looks so specific. Like, you can't have him have Deathlock face only in like X-ray vision mode. You know, that's so bogus. It's so lame. And I really liked Mike Peterson as a character until they turned him into Deathlock. And I think that for me felt like a version of the show trying really hard to be Marvel and really responding to a lot of the criticisms that the show isn't Marvel enough. The show doesn't have characters from the comics, you know, doesn't have characters from the movies. Like, what are you doing? Why are we watching these people? And it felt to me like the writers were like, oh, well, we could do Deathlock and we'll just throw in Deathlock here, and maybe that'll make some people excited. But it really never worked for me. And I think that the biggest problem was announcing it ahead of time. I think that set up, you know, before he arrives on the show as Deathlock, Marvel announced, Mike Peterson, J. Ox Richards' character, is Deathlock. He's going to be Deathlock, and that's happening in like 3 episodes from now. So I thought, announcing that really set the bar pretty high, set expectations really high, and just they never met them. He just looked like a Power Ranger villain, like that's like what he looked like, and it was not very good. So if they bring him back, A, I hope it's sparing, and B, I hope that he looks like Deathlock. Like, I hope he actually looks like, a Marvel character rather than a Power Rangers character.
Yeah, I think that announcement stuff, that again was like a product of the fact that they wanted to keep people interested but couldn't reveal the most interesting part of their season. I hope they find that balance better next season, because if they try and, first of all, I don't think the same trick will work twice.
Yeah.
I don't think that they'll be able to keep people intrigued enough. I think audiences have an expectation. I really hope that we get this season felt a little bit half-formed, if that makes sense. And I really hope we get a fully formed, like, mystery and mythology that we're a part of, and it's not just the characters saying, we know more than we're willing to let you know as the audience, and you're just going to have to wait for it. I really hope that it's a journey we can all go on together, and I think that could drive it. And I think they set it up really well. There's a lot that I'm really intrigued about for next season, and I'm very much looking forward to where they go.
Yeah, the people who used to, when Fringe was on the air, I think around season 3 maybe is when the show really started to shift. Seasons 2 and seasons 3 started to shift towards what they called the structure of their episodes to be mythalones. Not necessarily, standalone monster of the week episodes, not necessarily episodes that were like highly focused on the ongoing mythology the way that Lost would sometimes do, but episodes that kind of had a little bit of both. The mystery of the week drove significant plot points further along. Like, every episode mattered. You had to watch to find out, what's Olivia's purpose and Peter Bishop's purpose and everything like that. And I think that was great. Fringe lost me a little bit towards the end, but the middle seasons, 2, 3, and 4, I thought were really, really strong because they kind of leaned into that formula, into that structure. And I think that S.h.i.e.L.D. started doing that towards the end of season 1, kind of playing up the mythalone, having these missions of the week that were really important to driving the plot forward. And I think you and I would both agree that the Captain America episodes from that point on were really strong and really focused and really tight. And I think if they can come back and do something like that, where there is, a central thing that every week is, if not exactly about that central thing, but is somehow tied to that central thing, I think is going to be critical. And I'm optimistic about it, because not just of the strength of these last few episodes, but also the structure for next season. ABC just had their upfronts. They announced that Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. is going to be aired in 2 chunks next year. It's going to be 1 block of episodes. The Agent Carter TV show, which is about Peggy Carter in the 1940s and stemming from the Marvel one-shot and her role in Captain America, that's going to be a TV show that airs between 2 chunks of Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. So next year, basically, once Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. starts and when it ends, that whole period is going to be all Marvel all the time, and that's very cool. But basically, rather than looking at that as two different seasons of 2 shows, it's really 2 seasons of S.h.i.e.L.D. we're getting next year. We're going to get maybe like a 9-episode block of S.h.i.e.L.D. and then however many episodes of Agent Carter, and then the next 12 episodes of S.h.i.e.L.D. So hopefully that means each chunk of season is going to be very focused and very tight and a little bit more, closely plotted together than we saw this season. I don't know. Are you as optimistic about that as I am?
I hope so. The one thing that really gives me pause is I don't want them to go to the heroes route, where it's like 2 completely different arcs on each side. I don't know if you
sure.
know what I mean.
Oh, but yeah, I watched Heroes. I wouldn't call myself a Heroes fan, but I watched.
I want it to not feel like 2 different comic book arcs. I want it to still feel like 1 TV season. But I agree. I think they need 1 strong through line for this season that they didn't have for all of this past season, and I think that will make it a much stronger show.
So, prediction time.
All right.
what do you think season 2 is going to focus on?
I think it's going to be about this Skye mystery and why that's important. I think it won't just be about, well, who's Skye. I think that finding out who she is and why evolution is so important, as Raina puts it, will have huge ramifications on the Marvel Cinematic Universe and these characters in particular. And I think that will probably, figuring out that mystery and figuring out what exactly is going on and why Skye is special and who she is, will probably be a big part of the show. And I think it'll relate probably to the Coulson mystery and what he is doing and whether he's even aware of what he is doing.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you think that would be connected to that, and I agree. I think those two things are definitely going to be connected. What do you think about S.h.i.e.L.D. as an entity now that Coulson has been named director of S.h.i.e.L.D. and he has to build it from the ground up? What do you think that's going to look like when we come back for season 2? Do you think that it's going to be the next day or the next week and it's still kind of in pieces? Do you think that when we get back to S.h.i.e.L.D. it's going to be built up a little sturdier than that? Do you think it's going to be public? Do you think it's going to be stealth S.h.i.E.L.D.? What are your thoughts on how S.h.i.E.L.D. is going to be represented in season 2?
I don't think it'll be public, and I don't think it'll be completely built up, but what I really hope that we don't get is like a case of the week, Coulson going to recruit this S.h.i.E.L.D. agent or doing this. I would much more prefer him be a director and be a bit more behind the scenes. I also really would like to have Kobe Smulders come back as more of a recurring guest star. How I Met Your Mother isn't on the air anymore. I'm sure she wants some time off, but still, having Maria Hill as Coulson's second in command instead of the other way around would be great, and a great way to keep her in the universe, and also a great way to sort of offload that rebuilding to someone else.
Yeah, and of course in the comic books, Maria Hill is director of S.h.i.E.L.D. On numerous occasions, so there's precedent for that as well, for her to be really high up on the food chain, and maybe one day we could see the day where Coulson decides he's not the man for the job and Maria Hill gets it. I hope that we see more Maria Hill. I always thought that she was really good. What do you think in terms of the cast for next season? Who do you think are going to be the regulars? Are we going to see any big changes to the lineup from this season, or do you think it's going to be pretty close to what we saw?
I think it's going to be pretty much the same. Maybe they'll bring Ruth Negga on and what's his, Aidan Turner, who plays Ian Quinn. I think that's the actor. I think maybe we'll see them be a bit more present. I agree with you. I as much as I like J. August Richards, I hope that he and Deathlock get a bit of a backseat role. And I'd like to see some payoff from some of the other things that they set up. They set up Blizzard being a character. Ian Quinn has Graviton, doesn't necessarily know that it has a man who wants to kill him inside, who's now a supervillain. But I think that the main cast will remain the main cast. I really don't think that there's going to be any shakeup there.
I think it says a lot that we're drawing to the end here right now, I think, and it says a lot that we've talked about so much about Agents of S.h.i.E.L.D. and we barely talked about Nick Fury being in the mix. And I think that's funny because people were really clamoring for more of the Marvel Cinematic Universe characters to be involved in this show, especially Nick Fury, because he's the director of S.h.i.E.L.D. and this show is called Agents of S.h.i.E.L.D. And you really only heard about him. You saw him in that one kind of funny little Easter eggy scene at the end of, I think it was maybe even the second episode, and then you see him in a big way in this episode, obviously. But I don't know. Did you even think that we needed to see Nick Fury in the finale?
I think that we did, mostly to serve as an epilogue to Captain America, to tie that back together and to give that to some finality. And we needed it so that I think it was important that Coulson be named director of S.h.i.E.L.D. I think that was a really important bookend to this season. But people are always like, and honestly, I think that the people who say this aren't necessarily people who avidly watch the show and are fans, but they're always like, when are we going to get Tony Stark? When are we going to get blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And I think that would just be such a disservice to the show, because of course Robert Downey Jr. is never going to do an episode of Agents of S.h.i.E.L.D., but also, like, unless there's a really good purpose for having a one-off episode with Tony Stark, it just is very contrived. I will say, with that being said, one character who I would love to see have a role on Agents of S.h.i.E.L.D. is Bruce Banner. I think that it would give that character something to do, since we know we aren't getting a movie for a while, and he could be a really interesting, especially if we're dealing with evolution, he could be a really interesting asset to that storyline.
Yeah, I do think it would be cool to see at least one of the Avengers show up on S.h.i.e.L.D. at some point, and I think Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner popping in would be pretty awesome. I think that would be, he's been referenced a lot. I think seeing him in an episode, maybe the problem there would be, of course, how do you pull off the Hulk on Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D.? And you can't just have Bruce Banner on Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. Bruce Banner's got to turn into the Hulk if he shows up. So I think that would be the one rub, is that would be kind of difficult. I feel like somebody like Hawkeye would be pretty easy because the dude just needs a bow and arrow, and you don't really got to spend any special effects budget to have Jeremy Renner on the show. You just got to pay his fee. So I feel like that's a character who could kind of easily pop in. But I don't know. We'll see. I think that the show did a fairly decent job of working without, Earth's Mightiest Heroes being on tap every week. And of course, I'm not going to complain about Samuel L. Jackson being on Agents of S.h.i.E.L.D. for an episode, but I also didn't think like he was the powerhouse moment of the finale. I did think that when he shows up and saves FitzSimmons, I thought that was really awesome. I thought that was a very cool moment, but I don't think that it was the thing that tied the whole episode together. I don't think that it was the thing that made the episode the strongest. I think that there were other things that were really working in its favor. But anyway, yeah, Terri, I don't know, is there more to talk about? Did we miss anything talking about S.h.i.e.L.D., or do you think we covered it?
I think we got it. I think, they answered more questions with questions, but I'm happy about it now instead of frustrated. So
yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought that the finale was really good, and I think that it was a good example of, we talked about heroes a little bit in here. Dan Heaton in the chat room just mentioned UGG heroes, and I'm with you. I'm not a big heroes guy, but Heroes was a show that started pretty strong and then got really weak. And I think that S.h.i.e.L.D. started pretty weak and then finished out pretty strong. And I think that it's positioned to do really well, and kind of come back and be more consistent as with this back half of the season, and really go for it. And damn it, put Triplet on the show.
Yeah.
Do not do this to me. Do not have me invested in Triplet and not put him on the show. I'm going to be so freaking mad if that's the case. But anyway, I think it's cool. I think next year has a lot of potential, especially with Agent Carter in the mix. I'm really excited for Agent Carter. How about you?
Yeah, I'm so happy that they're doing it. And I don't know if you saw Haley Atwell's picture that she posted where she was just like jaw dropped, so excited. That makes me really happy, and it makes me happy that they have the writing team from Captain America, Marcus and McFeely, on it as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's in good hands. The Marvel one-shot, Agent Carter, if you haven't seen it yet, guys, you really should check it out. It's very good. And Haley Atwell's so good as that character. And I'm all about having that character on a more regular basis. And, of course, because we have, she's an old lady in the current Marvel movies, so she's not really going to be popping up too much in the Marvel films. So this is the way to have her be involved. And I think 1940s Marvel is a cool idea, and certainly it was really great in Captain America: The First Avenger, and to have that on a weekly basis it's going to be cool atmosphere. I love the period piece aspect of it, but also it gives the opportunity to do a lot of things that don't necessarily have to tie to the Marvel movies the way that Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. does.
Right.
Because it's not, it's a completely different era. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. And also it sounds like we're going to see Howard Stark on that show.
I know. I was just going to say that. I really want Dominic Cooper back. And at TCAs, when they first started talking about Agent Carter potentially being a thing, I talked to him there, and he was like, I'm totally on board. Rep me, do whatever you need to do. I'm totally on board to come back. So I hope that's still the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And, maybe we could see some Howling Commandos. I don't think Neil McDonough is tied to any TV shows right now, so maybe we could see him back as Dum Dum Dugan, which I think hardcore Marvel fans and even casual Marvel fans would be really pumped up about. So, especially because Agent Carter, I think it's only going to be a few episodes. It's going to be a shorter series.
Yeah, it's probably going to be like the 13 or whatever mid-season.
they're talking about it as a bridge show between the first half of season 2 of Agents of S.h.i.e.L.D. and the second half of season 2. So I have to imagine it's not going to be more. It's not going to be more than 13, and it might even be less.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool. Just a concentrated dose of Agent Carter is going to be a really nice booster shot in the Marvel programming next year. But I'm excited for Marvel, and listen, if you guys listening to this on post-show recaps are enjoying the Marvel shows and you guys want some more coverage in the fall, I'm open to it. So give a shout. If you've made it this far in the podcast, we'd love to know. We'll how about a hashtag? What do you think? A hashtag for the people who've gotten to the end here. What do you think, Terri?
PSH Marvel or PSR.
How about hashtag Agents of PSR? Let's see how many of you guys are out there, and let us know if you're S.h.i.e.L.D. or HYDRA. And if you're HYDRA, you probably shouldn't let us know. You should probably tell us you're S.h.i.e.L.D. so that we trust you. But you're probably HYDRA.
Yeah,
and I can
if
smell
you're HYDRA, you're probably doing it wrong. I think the first rule of HYDRA is you don't talk about HYDRA. But
yeah. I think that's Fight Club, but I think it's close. I think it's close. Anyway, that's going to do it for us, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Terri, always great to talk to you. And Terri, we will be back with some Game of Thrones book club sometime next week. I'm not sure when, but we're going to schedule it and we're going to get it going on.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Absolutely, Terri. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.